Hi, it's Wednesday, February 12th, and we're tracking Tropical Cyclone Zelia off the coast of Western Australia this week. The system is sitting offshore and is forecast to meander offshore and make landfall eventually on Friday sometime. And before then, it could intensify potentially significantly as it sits offshore here. But regardless of that, we're also going to see continued heavy rainfall along this part of the coast, and that rainfall could easily lead to flooding issues in Western Australia. Let's look at the storm right now of how it's doing. We can see on satellite imagery, the system seems to be trying to organize itself better. Now, if you look on the eastern side of the convection, we do have some pretty rapid clockwise spin coming out of it, and this may be a bit of a false sense of a weaker storm. If you look at this, you may think, oh, that's a low level center, and this is getting decoupled from the convection. But I think in reality, this is more just the eastern part of the low level center. Just looking at model initializations of this system, the expectation has been that the center was a little bit elongated southwest to northeast, and what I think is happening is that given all the convection that we're seeing off further west, the system center is sort of elongated like this, and we're seeing just here the eastern part of it. Now, we are seeing an attempt of the storm to tighten this up underneath the convection. You can see that if I pause this at the end here, we have textured cloud tops here on what appears to be in the north side of some kind of divot in the center of this, perhaps the western end of the system's center, and it's curling around in a clockwise fashion, which could indicate that the system is trying to tighten up that center circulation at the surface, perhaps get it more circular than elliptic than we are seeing today. And this, if it continues, is going to allow the system to intensify further, and the environment is favorable for intensification to occur if it does keep this up. You can see this on water vapor imagery. Now, we do have some shear impacting the system. It's on the scale of around 10 knots. It's not very strong as we are getting further south from all this plentiful easterly flow over Indonesia and just north of Australia. And on the south side of the storm, we have a very nice divergent flow coming into shape as this trough digs into southwestern Australia. This divergent flow is going to help the system greatly in developing today, and this will likely aid the system a little bit in its intensification, assuming it stays offshore. And that's one little answer we still need in the next day. This trough is not only providing this divergent flow, but it's also pulling the system south. That's the reason why it's moving away from all this wind shear. But this trough is moving at a fairly quick pace to the east, and you can see how fast this moves if we look at the European mid-layer flow. And this is showing you basically what I just showed you on water vapor imagery. Here's our area of high pressure over Central Australia, and here's our trough. And you can see that this trough pivots east. We have this door open for the system with this ridge's flow and the flow on the base of this trough. That's really an open door southeast, but this trough is not going to hang around for all too long. And before the system really gets onshore on this forecast, we get this frontal boundary to come further north as high pressure builds further west in the wake of this trough. And this is bringing sort of a break onto the southern track that the system can get. And you can see on the European, it tracks south initially, but once that frontal boundary hits, it just stalls off the coast. And this allows the system being still over water to intensify. And the question is, how far south is this trough able to pull it before it fully departs and this frontal boundary comes in? The consensus from models, which we do have a pretty good consensus, being a day or less out from this actually occurring, the consensus is that the system is going to be able to stay offshore, and that's the current forecast from the Bureau of Meteorology, and this is going to allow the system to continue intensifying as it sits offshore. Now, the question there becomes, is there going to be any shear to halt the system from intensifying at a significant degree? Most models don't seem to think so, because we do have on the European and the GFS rapid intensification explicitly shown on model runs. And you can see this if we look at the European upper level wind plot. This is showing you sort of as well the flow that I showed you on the water vapor imagery. This is at the top of the atmosphere. This is where some upper level shear may come in to potentially impact our storm. Now on this, you can see the storm's intensity is pretty high on this model run. That number is down to 942 millibars. That is a very strong cyclone coming into northern parts of Western Australia on this forecast. And you can see we do have some competing areas of high pressure surrounding the storm. We have this one still sitting here over central Australia, and there's one off the screen further west over the Indian Ocean. Now, it's possible that this eastern one does bring some shear to the system. We do have this fetch of easterly flow coming a little further south on this, and on runs like the GFS has, it does have that shear coming into play a little bit. But if you look at the flow overall on the European model here, we have northerly flow on the western edge of the eastern ridge, southerly flow on the eastern edge of the Indian Ocean ridge, and these flows are effectively canceling each other out. And what that ends up being is a low shear environment in the upper levels of the atmosphere. The question is, can we get some of this shear from the east on the northern end of this ridge over Australia to impact the system greater? The GFS does show a scenario where the system has perhaps a little bit more shear, though even then the GFS does not fully stop it from intensifying. It still does intensify to a significant degree. So we're kind of in this fragile setup where we don't know if the system's going to be fully offshore enough to intensify. And if it is, could perhaps some shear that's maybe a little bit stronger than forecast stop the system in its tracks from intensifying? And this is a very sensitive forecast. It's a high ceiling, but there is a fail mode here for the system's intensification. And exactly what's going to happen, that is going to be something we watch very closely over the next couple of days. And I think by, tomorrow, when we see exactly how far offshore the system is, how the shear is verifying on models, then we can get a pretty good idea. Can the system actually intensify? Are we seeing the trend that we're seeing this morning continue? If we do keep seeing this, where we see convection wrapping around the center of circulation, that is going to be a favorable sign for intensification. And if that is able to continue unimpeded by shear, that will allow rapid intensification because the waters are plenty warm and there's no real relative humidity issues either. It's really all up to shear to stop it. Now, given the sensitivity of this forecast, the Bureau of Meteorology has gone in the middle ground of the wider array of intensity probabilities. They're forecasting a system to become a Category 3 storm before coming into Western Australia. I will make sure quickly that we don't have a new one, just in case. I'm not exactly sure when they issue their advisories. It doesn't look like we have a new one, so this is the latest one. But you can see Category 3, the system sits offshore. And could it potentially get stronger than this? It could. Could it be a little weaker than this or about on par? Absolutely. There's a wide array. Again, high ceiling, but there's a fail mode here. But either way, Category 3 is still significant, and we could see storm surge, heavy rainfall, and storm surge, or I already mentioned storm surge, but of course strong gusty winds along the immediate coastline. You can see this is a wide area of potential impacts from around Broome on down to Port Hedland for the cyclone warning, and a cyclone watch extends further inland in areas like Marble Bar and on down west towards Dampier. And so this system will have widespread impacts, and partially this does have to do with track. There are some models deviating west or east with the system's track. The GFS is west. That's why we have a cyclone watch further west here in Dampier. But we also have models like the European and the Canadian, which are further east of Port Hedland. And that will be important to watch for storm surge impacts, because if you have the system coming east of you, you don't really have much of a storm surge threat. Whereas if it comes west of you, that enhances the storm surge. And that will be key to picking out who gets the worst storm surge from this storm once it does come in. Now, as I mentioned, rainfall will be an impact of the storm regardless of intensity. This is the current forecast from the GFS ensemble. I will show you this in closer view. This red area is about 150 millimeters of rainfall or more, and you can see that spreading across this part of the coastline of Western Australia. And we could have some totals here in local areas exceeding 300 millimeters, which could easily lead to flooding issues as the system sits offshore. But as it does come ashore as well, we could see heavy rainfall extending in. This is a wide region of 75 to 100 millimeters of rainfall, which could fall in a short period of time, which could bring flooding issues to inland areas in Western Australia. Lots of impacts coming with this storm. I will have more videos on the system throughout the week as it tracks south. Very sensitive forecast on this. Make sure you're staying tuned to the Bureau of Meteorology and local officials so you know the current forecast and also how you can prepare ahead of the storm and so you can be most prepared. So that's all for now. I'll have, like I said, I'll have more videos throughout the week. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.